approve the agenda.
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Your votes, please. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? First on the agenda tonight is a presentation by Dr. Nielsen on the Student Achievement Report.
Usually this report comes a lot earlier, but the state did not release all the data until the very end of December 21st to be exact, so the report is coming in January. And the report is about what happened in spring of 2018. So we're talking about last year with our juniors, last year, which would be our seniors, and with our 3rd through 8th graders last year as well. So a couple of things, I will give you an overview. If you want more information, please stop by. Feel free to come in and see me, and we can talk a little bit deeper, because right now I'm just going to give you an overview as to where we are at this point in time. A couple of things to remember as we move on to the next slide. This was the second year that juniors, all juniors, took the ACT summative assessment, so we looked at trying to get 100% participation, and I will tell you we were very close. So second year for that, this is our 3rd through 8th grade students took the NSCAS assessment, math assessment, and that was the first year for the math assessment, second year for the English language arts assessment. So you can see a lot of these assessments, we really do not, we have a baseline and we're starting to gather trend data, but we do not have trend data at this point in time. New assessments have required a much higher score for proficiency. So one of the things that we've been looking at as curriculum directors across the state is that on math, you look at kind of percentiles, your national percentile of where a student falls. So basically between the 1st percentile to the 99th percentile. If I want to be proficient on the NSCAS, we are finding that you need to score in between the 60th to 65th percentile. So that really is above average, because your average would be the 40th to 60th percentile if you're looking at national norms. So for the NSCAS, really you have to be above average to be proficient on the NSCAS. So it's kind of something that we've looked at and questioned and thought, that's interesting. But scores maintained in English language arts, the state basically said we're going to keep the same scores because of what they did with data. It maintained, and then math dropped dramatically. However, some of our math scores, I think, did quite well. So those are some things that we'll look at. The test will be adaptive and uses questions created by Nebraska educators. What adaptive means is that when a 4th grader takes the test, they get questions that range within that year. So they will start with a question that might be 1st grade 4th month or 1st grade 1st month. But then by the end, they could be, 4th grade 1st month. By the end, they could be 4th grade 10th month. Or they could still be 4th grade 2nd month. So it depends upon where they are. If they get it right, they go to a harder question. If they get it wrong, they go to an easier question, but within that grade range. So nothing goes outside of that grade range at this point in time. English language arts proficiency, you can see that we have the 16-17 data compared to the 17-18. You can see that our 3rd grade overall went up 9%. That means what I'm looking at is 46% in 16-17, 46% of our 3rd graders were proficient. To 17-18, 55% of our 3rd graders were proficient. So I am comparing 3rd grade, I'm not comparing cohorts. I can go and start comparing and saying our 3rd grade in 16-17, there were 46%. To 17-18, they jumped up to 52%. So I can start going that way too, if I want to, which is pretty awesome to say our 3rd to 4th grade that they grew. I mean, because really that's what we want to see. 4th grade, they saw +4. 5th grade, they saw a -4, which that's wrong. Sorry about that. Yeah, 67 to 51 is not -4. Don't know where I got that 48 to 47 is -1. 48 to 41, with our 7th grade, they went down, and then grade 8, 57 to 56, they went down as well. Two of the things, you see grade 3 and grade 8 are in bold. Those two are above the state average as you look at those scores. The second year of assessment, this was a new interface, so this was a different system that we were utilizing for the 17-18 assessment rather than what we were utilizing for 16-17. So it was a new interface for our students to get used to, and there were some technology pieces that changed. And so there were some things there that I think you could probably make an argument for or against that technology had a part to play in maybe them not improving as much, or maybe it was a step up to help them improve.
Jackie, is it typical when you look at across the grades, grade 5 and 16-17 were 67% to 47%? Is that a middle school transition, or is there something else?
That could be a middle school transition. That could be that the 6th grade test was maybe a little bit more rigorous. There could be a lot of dynamics, and that's why what we want to do is we want to take a look at what happens 3rd year. We look at this and definitely talk with teachers about this and administrators, but we want to keep seeing if all of a sudden that happens again next year. That's where we start looking at what questions do we need to get answered. Because right now it could just be an anomaly. It could be, and I have double checked some of these figures, so you know, it is one of those things that it's, wow, that just doesn't make sense. So, yes, those are questions and things that we look at, but right now I don't think we have any real answers. It could be the system that they use, the new assessment system. There's just too many variables at this point in time to kind of pinpoint and to really narrow it down, but we do continue to look at that as we get the trend data.
I think that's certainly one of the things that could be a big dynamic is mobility within the class. You know, class kids you haven't been in now, so. Yes.
Well, we also take two schools into that.
Yep.
You only bring 2 schools into
Well, that's
that.
why,
Yeah.
we're part of that's the
That's 6th grade transition too.
And you bring a percentage of kids who've never been in a testing environment because they go to a private school.
Yep. Yeah. So those are all different things that we look at, and we just start having those conversations as to what happened. The one thing about the assessments that you're looking at right now is this is the Nebraska State Assessment. This is a one-shot test. You take it once, and that's all. You don't get a redo, you don't get to show growth. You take it once your 4th grade year, once your 5th grade year. We also use map assessment, and I will tell you, I like the map assessment because it shows growth. And you give kids where they were and when they took it in August, so the fall assessment, you give them their score in winter, and they are trying to beat it. I mean, they sit there and they do their best, and they are so excited when they've met those goals. It is fun to watch the growth, and that's what I think assessment is about. Assessment is about making sure that we're having growth with the children. We have assessment for accountability, and that's what INSCAS is it's for accountability. So, and yes, you do need accountability, don't get me wrong, but I think growth is pretty awesome. Okay, so moving on to the map. This is where we started. This is the first year we've given the math assessment, and the other question that I will tell you that comes up is with our 6th grade, looking back at even this 47th percentile for ELA compared to their 72nd, or 47th percent proficient compared to 72% proficient. So that's the other thing that I would throw out there, what happened there. It was because overall, the 6th grade class has usually been, when you've looked at assessment scores, they have usually been a pretty high-performing group. So those are, again, red flags. They send us something up just saying, okay, what's going on, what maybe didn't happen, or what happened during the assessment. I mean, there are a lot of things that go on with this assessment, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint, but you continue to have those conversations as to, okay, where did the students miss? What did they miss, and how can we continue to improve? But overall, you can see that this is where our baseline starts, and when we looked at the NISA assessments, we were primarily 70 to 80% proficient. So I will tell you, I am kind of pleased with that we didn't have as huge a drop that we did with ELA, because ELA went from 80, 90th, 95th percent, percent proficient to, as we look at it, mostly 40% proficient. I mean, we had, our math actually did not sustain that, and it did not have as large of a drop as our English language arts. But I will tell you, the English language arts assessment is pretty difficult when they're asking, but math is too, so don't get me wrong. So we have a nice place to start, and we are going to continue moving forward and going to continue to figure out, okay, where do we need to help our students? Where do we need to ensure that they are mastering the standards and are proficient in the skills before we move on? The one thing that I will tell you our teachers struggle with, and I struggle with this across, many people struggle with this across the state, and that's why we have to look at the purpose of this assessment is it's for accountability. We don't get feedback. We get very little feedback on it. It may be 3 big indicators, and we figure out where we are with writing skills, with reading comprehension, with vocabulary. That doesn't tell me much, because reading comprehension is so broad that there are so many factors as part of it that maybe we're low in reading comprehension, but what does that really mean? Are we low in making inferences? Are we low in really looking at, how figurative language helps develop passages? What are we low in? That is the part with these assessments, is that we get a very small snapshot of what we are missing. So that's why we really rely a lot more on the math assessment, because that goes deeper, that really pinpoints as to what a child is missing and where we need to go to fill that gap.
How closely does the MAPS correlate with this assessment? Not even,
They-
or?
They are getting much closer, because MAPS and NSCAS are both created by Northwest Evaluation Association, so they are actually becoming closer. Yeah, more closely related. So that is kind of a nice piece, because even in when we give the MAP assessments, there is a student profile page that talks about where the students will be with the MAPS when they take, or with the NSCAS when they take it in the spring. So that's been a nice piece that they just added this winter. So they are working on really trying to narrow it and make sure that if they are ranking, if they're sitting here on the MAP assessment, that means that correlates to here on NSCAS. So we'll see how closely it relates come spring as well. And science assessment. Science assessment is based on the legacy standards. That means it's based on old standards. So, and they have currently revised the standards, but the new assessment will not come into place until 2021. So, you can see as a district, we are above the state average in the 8th grade. The 5th grade dropped a little bit, and we are a little bit below the state average in the 5th grade. Overall, you can see 5th grade kind of goes up and down, and 8th grade stays pretty stable at where they are. One of the things that, as you look at the 5th grade, even as you look at K-5, yes, we teach science, but our focus becomes math and reading, because we know we have to ensure that they are reading at a very high level and computing at a very high level before we leave elementary. So that we do teach social studies and we do teach science, but we don't necessarily get it to students every single day. Like when they get to the middle school, they have that class every single day. So I think that does play a part in the science assessment as well, as to what knowledge the students come with, what knowledge they have maybe from outside activities with their families, what knowledge that they have received in previous grades. And it will be interesting with our new bill that Senator Linehan passed last year, LB 651, the Reading Act, the Reading Improvement Act, what happens with the social studies and science. We will still cover them, but it'll be interesting. I'm meeting with principals on Monday to talk about how we have to make sure that every child is reading on grade level by 3rd grade, And if they aren't K, 1, 2, or 3, that they are on a reading proficiency plan, improvement plan, and just monitoring, and I will tell you the data is showing that a large number of students will be on a reading improvement plan. And one of those could be my daughter because of her August assessment, she didn't do too well. So, you know, and that's one assessment, but December she rocked it, but August she didn't because it was one of the first days, you know, one of the first days back. So those are some things we're looking at too, and it'll be interesting to see how everything works out, but the real focus is on that literacy. And I agree that literacy is very important, and if I do literacy, then I can do some of these other pieces as well. ACT assessment, you can see where if I am on track or if I'm meeting ACT benchmark, those are identified. So ACT benchmark in ELA is 20 or above, math is 22 or above, and science is 23 or above. On track will get you 18, 18, or 19 and above. So, and then developing is going to be less than 18 or less than 19 in science. As we look at our ACT state data, the percent on track or above, in ELA it fell this past year. In math it dropped by 1%, which I would say that's pretty stable. And in science, it went up by 5%. And one of the things that the science teachers did was they implemented a 5-minute ACT practice at the beginning of their day. And so before each class period started, they had a 5-minute ACT review. Here's a question, let's take and go through it. Let's make sure that we're seeing some of those questions as we move through the class period and talk about them. So I know that our math and ELA have taken some advice from them, have started looking at what they're doing in their practices and working with that as well. You can also see though, as you look at the ACT trends, our average score in 16-17 is much different than our average score in 2018, but the total tested is also much different in 2018. So this is pretty awesome that all kids have the opportunity to take the ACT. However, it's also one of those things that all kids have the opportunity to take the ACT. So it's great. I am so glad that they are able to do it. But you also have to realize that there are some, ACT is a test meant for admission into that four-year university to determine how much of a scholarship you're going to get. And so, you know, we also pride ourselves on all of the other things our students are doing that might not take them to a four-year university yet. They might have just as successful life as someone else. And so we're very, you know, our kids do an awesome job. And again, with all of these assessments, it's one little puzzle piece. One little piece to the puzzle that we look at. Yes, we look at trying to figure out how can we do better, because every day we want to keep improving, but we also have to look at these and say, okay, where are we doing well? What do we need to keep improving? And then where do we go for the year to follow? Yes. So, future implications. Our NSCAS science test will be 2021. They will be using the new college and career readiness standards. And we've begun professional development. We've also begun implementation. One of the things, though, that could happen because we are implementing is standards move. And so we may have had a third grade standard move to fourth grade, or a fifth grade standard move to sixth grade, or a sixth grade standard move to fifth grade. And so standards have kind of been jostled that could affect those science assessment scores. Just because with things moving, and I've told the teachers, I said, your goal is to implement the new standards that the board has adopted. So we will take, if the science scores drop, I will take that one. However, the really cool thing about what the implementation of the new science standards is that they are really asking kids to think in a different way and to problem solve and to talk about how they're problem solving and to discuss it. And I know in 7th grade they are doing Genius Hour, and they did one first semester, and they're doing a second one second semester. What was really cool is just the revelation with some of the students as to, oh, that's what I was supposed to do. I could have done better if I would have done this, or only I would have done that. And so the first semester was just let's just try this and see how it works. But the second semester, they actually have to come up with their own project, research about it, determine how they would move that forward or how they would help improve it. So it really has been kind of cool just to watch them come up with their own ideas and just put it into practice and kind of use that research and that presentation skill that we know they need. Focus on appropriately challenging our students and holding all learners to high expectations, and this is something that we're continuing to work with, because we know that if we don't have the high expectations, we have not set our students up for success on any of the assessments, or even post-secondary. So we know that we want to continue to hold them to the high expectations. The other piece is focus on the 4 C's, like critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Those things are huge. And if we can get our students doing those pieces, they'll be very successful. Even if they don't maybe score as well on the assessments, they'll still be very successful if I can collaborate, if I can communicate. If I can think differently, they will be maybe more successful than we are, you know? And so, and that's the really cool thing is our goal is to make them more successful than we are. And social studies standards are currently being evaluated and revised, so I think that's something that we have to continue to look at. I don't foresee an assessment in social studies because there has to be some funding source, and right now there is no funding source, so I don't see an assessment in social studies, but it'll be interesting to see how those change and how it moves through the year. I would assume that there will be plenty of people talking to the state board about the social studies standards and how much they agree with them or how much they do not agree with them. And thoughts. So, as the state has moved to the more rigorous standards, we have revised our curriculum to meet those standards. This is not easy work for students and teachers, but we'll prepare students for college and career readiness, and that is our goal, is to continue to figure out where our curriculum is and where does it need to change. Where does it need to move forward? Again, I said this before, but the test is one measure of the student achievement, of the student performance. It's one little measure. And so to put all your eggs in that one basket isn't going to be worth much. So we want to make sure that we look at everything. We look at what they're doing performance-wise. We look at what they're doing in the classroom. We look at what they're doing on the math assessment, in SCAS. We look at a wide variety of things. We look at what they're doing in the community. We look at how well-rounded the child is. And the Nebraska assessments and ACT focus more on college readiness. So our goal is to continue to get them ready for any aspect. And so we continue to focus on what can we do for career pathways, what can we do, and I know we'll talk about Perkins funding and our career academies later on this evening, but we continue to focus on what can we do to help prepare you to be successful after you leave our doors. Questions?
Where did we rank on ACT statewide? I saw where we were for the last 3 years, but what was the statewide average?
Statewide was right at 21,
Okay.
2021. It was in between there.
Okay.
We are below the state average, and we have not, as Mr. Suter, when we had Scott out to the high school and talked about ACT, one of the things that Mr. Suter said is, I'm not happy with being below the state, because we have not been below the state average. And so that is one thing that we're working on, but right now we are below the state average. Pretty close, but
Next year
next year we will, yes, that's exactly
I
it.
don't think we should care. I don't get, the ACT is preparing kids for a 4-year institution, and every single thing I go to says, we need to prepare kids for other kinds of jobs. The other kinds of jobs are where they're gonna make all the money. So I just think schools have to get off the idea that every single kid's goal, and they're gonna reach the mountain if they go to a 4-year college. I just think we need to stop that. And unfortunately, this perpetuates that idea that every single child needs to go to a 4-year institution to believe they've been successful. And then we wonder why kids don't do some of the welding and those courses, construction, because we're telling them they need to take the ACT, they need to go to a four-year institution. I'm really disappointed that the state chose the ACT. I just don't think it's not a good comparison. It's not. And what does it tell those students? I mean, some of the science, you have got to take upper level science courses. And I believe that people can be successful in their lives without taking calculus. Now, I know every math teacher will probably buzz me up tomorrow, but I think we've got to stop that. We've got to help kids feel successful because they are successful in lots of areas.
Do you know, I guess I don't look at it as telling kids they are or are not successful or they have to go to a four-year college. But I think you might have some students who also are surprised at how well they do and realize that they can do more than they thought they could do. It might challenge them.
But see, your statement feeds into that. They can do more than they thought. Because what if their option is they want to be a plumber? They want to be a plumber, that's what their goal is, but then your statement that if they take the ACT test, then they'll do more.
But you
I
know what,
think being a plumber is a fine occupation.
Do you know what? I think an electrician, a plumber, all of that is a fine occupation. It might be what they want to do. I think that has to play into it also. You have to do what you love.
But I think we need to be careful about, we constantly reward and honor the person who opts for a four-year college.
Well, then we're probably doing that wrong.
You know, we are, but we do it as educators almost unconsciously. It worked for us, therefore we want it to work for all these children. I think we need to get away from that mindset and find some ways to make kids feel successful. I get a little nervous that those are the only tests that we're putting so much emphasis on, and that's got to send a message to kids, I believe.
Well, I agree, because I know a lot of people who went to two-year schools and make a third more than anybody that went to four, not anybody, but people who went to four-year schools. So,
I just worry that, I just don't want us to get all hung up. I mean, I agree with you, we've got to focus on all areas of these kids' lives, you know, and newspapers need to make sure, radio stations need to make sure that they reward all areas of achievement, not just the person who gets a 36 on their ACT.
I think you're both right, and I guess what I hear, it'd be nice, I just am glad they didn't have these things. I mean, they had the ACT one out, but I'm glad they didn't have accelerated reader, I'm glad that we didn't have all these testing assessments when I was in school, because I probably may not have felt as good about school as I do as an adult. At that time when I was a kid, if I had to take all these assessments, there's a lot of pressures on kids. I go back to your statement, Hannah, I think you're exactly right from the standpoint that we have to want kids to do what they do because they love to do it. And I think we as adults sometimes get caught up in that too. It's not always completely about what your compensation is. It's about what your passion is. And I think some people have a passion for construction. Some people have a passion for reporting and news media. Some people have a passion for medicine or business, wherever it is. And I think sometimes all of this it's important to have that accountability, but in the same regard, we need to recognize kids for all the things they do. And so I think you're both right. And I think we've got a person that's got a lot of passion about keeping an eye on how we're doing, and thankful for that. So it's.
But there are times that I do realize that I would prefer to take this aside and do some other thing where we bring in kids, let's show you what we're doing, rather than talking to you about, however, this is one of the things, making sure that all stakeholders know that we have assessment data out there, and it's something that holds us accountable to making sure that our kids meet the standards. And yes, because I know our kids do amazing things, and it is I Love Public Schools Week, and so, we have an amazing public school, Beatrice. We have some school student. But I think we do right by our kids. We really do. We do right by our families, and that's assessment's one little piece. And that's why I continue to say it's one tiny piece, because it is a very small piece of the puzzle. It should not define it. Yes.
Other comments, questions?
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Nicely done, Dr. Newsom, thank you.
Next, we'll have a policy update from Mr. Alexander.
All right, just a few quick policies to make you aware of and go through. Again, this is a part of what it is we do, trying to move through these fairly quickly. On policy 3410, which is 4.1 in your packet, basically, we're looking at the fundraising aspect and kind of how we've gone this year, and I'm just bringing this to you for your advice and guidance more than anything. You as a board, this is part of what you get to do. So we have a policy a fundraising policy from 1994 we feel like just needs to be updated. We put a huge emphasis this year on focusing on the needs here in Beatrice, because we know there's needs everywhere, and we want to be a part of that. But we would like our emphasis to remain in Beatrice, and so we're looking at this policy and just saying, I don't want to restrict anybody's efforts as trying to either help the budget here, the school budget, if they want to try and raise money for the school, but in the same sense, we have to make sure that we aren't over asking, if that makes sense. And so there's all kinds of different ways now that people fundraise. We know the old-fashioned way of selling a piece of fruit or, you know, a pack of pizza or whatever. But now with the internet, there's the GoFundMe pages, all those things. So we're trying to just help our staff be more conscientious about how we do that. There's a lot of fundraisers we do. We want to just keep them as local as possible, but in the same sense, not forget that there's a whole big world out there. So basically what we've done, we haven't changed this policy a lot. We just added item D at the bottom, that focus will remain on local charities with minimal priority given to special global efforts. And that's just so if we have 8 people come in and say, hey, I'd like to do this for Africa, I'd like to do this for Indonesia, we can say, you know what, we've already got one going on, and if there's a way to reword that makes more sense to you, I would certainly entertain that to bring to you at the next meeting. So, questions, comments? That's just the intent. Just an old policy from '94 that we felt we needed to update. Kind of one of the suggestions we had. So.
Any question?
If you have something that you would suggest wording-wise, please feel free to email me. We can.
Well, I do think it's a stretch to go from local to global. Yeah, because, I mean, there's a lot of world in between. You've got state, you've got domestic, you've got international,
Yeah.
so.
Would that fall under the same thing as deciding to support, say, a legislative thing? Or, I guess what I'm getting at is, if we don't put our emphasis locally almost 100%, we're the only ones that really care about us. I mean, I don't think you're gonna get anything out of Norris to help Beatrice out, unless it's a partnership of some kind, or vice versa. I'm just saying, if we don't put ourselves as the #1 priority, nobody else is gonna.
What's an example of somebody raising money? Another country? I don't know what you're talking about, honestly.
Well, sometimes there's examples of shortages of food. I would think of the World Aid effort not too long ago, well, I say not too long ago, but, well, that was 1980 something. Holy cow. When they did-
All righty, talk about updating the policy.
Yeah, the
Time
world,
flies.
The We Are the World thing?
yeah, like that one. There's just all kinds of efforts that we could attach ourselves to, and I don't have a problem, especially if kids attach themselves specifically to something that's important to them that they've learned about.
Because didn't they, at the high school, didn't they bring shoes one time and we mailed them to overseas, I think I remember that, or, because they had, or then they wanted money for postage to mail the shoes, or I don't know, like, is that what you're talking about, rather than doing something, okay?
And I think if we as a community, or as a school, encourage our kids to, it's great to want to help the rest of the United States, like you said, Janet, or the world. It's great to want to have those, but let's keep the majority of our focus here, which I think we do already. And then if there's one or two of those small things, or those global things that come up for other places, we can say, well, we've got this going on, let's just stick with this one that's helping feed Africa right now. That, for instance, the 7th graders are doing this, or the seniors are doing this. Because according to the policy, they are supposed to come get approval before they do it, which we've had to educate our staff on a little bit this fall. And their hearts are, and their intentions are in the right place. They really are. And I love that. It's just, we have to be cognizant of how much we are asking, so.
Because I broke the policy. Because I didn't even think of it when I saw a GoFundMe page. It didn't occur to me that that had anything to do with the public schools. It was just this individual GoFundMe. Okay, I'll do that. That sounds really nice.
I was
But
gonna say, I have to say, that was a really creative, great idea.
Absolutely.
But you can't have
Everyone.
30
Yeah.
GoFundMe pages, you know, so.
It's exactly right. I think everybody's intentions are in the right place. It just is a matter of us
right.
being cognizant.
But I kind of agree with Steve. I think I'd prefer to have it just say, focus will remain on local charities. That doesn't mean that they can't do something for out of the community efforts, but I still think it needs to remain on local charities or organizations.
It gives, I appreciate the input because it gives, what I'm looking for is just flexibility as I make those decisions to encourage people to keep the focus local. But if the kids come, which actually did happen before Christmas, the kids came and said, hey, they had read a book and learned about a situation overseas that is just a really dire situation. And they're taking something they've learned and applying that to a global cause. I think that's huge, and it's a great learning opportunity. And I think what we just need to be able to do now is just be able to say to everybody else, okay, we've got this going on. This is our one.
Well, and you know, maybe you could do focus will remain on local charities, period. Outside charities or organizations will be evaluated on a case-to-case basis or something like that.
That's a great suggestion.
But I mean, global to me means anywhere.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they can't do it anywhere, it's just, local sounds so good.
Perfect. All right. Appreciate the guidance on that.
You want to move to grievance procedures?
Yeah,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yep.
I would, just as an update, I don't have anything to put in front of you right now, because I think it's important to go through the right process. And the negotiations committee has been working with the BEA on grievance procedures that we currently have in the negotiated agreement, and we have a grievance process and policy. And those two things are very similar in nature, but they really, what we're trying to do is separate the adult things that are in the negotiated agreement. So when we talk about those things, we talk about basically three things: sick leave, pay, and benefits. And those are adult issues that really belong in the negotiated agreement. On the other side of things, we have board policy that may be things that involve more student type or work-related type, environmental issues, cultural issues within school. So what we're trying to do is separate those two things, but keep as much of the same procedural processes in place as we can with those two things being separate. So if we have a concern or grievance about an adult issue, whether it be one of those three things I mentioned, or we have a concern from a staff member or a patron or a student on something over here that's more related to those, the process and the procedures are basically the same and followed in the same policy. So that's the overall goal of all of it, and I wanted to just bring it to your attention. We've been working on it through the negotiations committee with the BDA, and I think we're close to having something ready to put down in front of everybody. And so as that starts to evolve, I didn't want you to get caught off guard when it comes to you for further discussion. I just want you to know that's been an ongoing process that's been ongoing. So, just a quick update.
Officers?
Officer positions. Essentially, this is the policy that we talked about a little bit as we went through the officer elections reorganization of the board at the last meeting. And we just need to update some of the language. It's in policy 9115 in regards to the annual reorganization or annual organizational meeting that takes place in January when we re-elect officers. And essentially, under the item number 3, the secretary, we just need to add the terminology or assistant superintendent as an ex officio officer. So just add the words or assistant superintendent. And under item number 4, the treasurer position, it references business manager, and we probably need to, since we don't really have that title anymore, or position, we probably need to make it superintendent or assistant superintendent, so in the future you can have those offices.
Would the same be true for the secretary position?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so as I was looking at this and thinking about it, you're gonna love this. I wonder how many other policies have business manager as a designee for something, and those policies need to be updated. So there you go, if you didn't have anything to do.
I imagine you're right, and at some point in my head, there becomes a question mark between whether we address these policies as we are right now, kind of one by one as they come up and pop up, and or if we look at working with our policy, because a lot of policies are all legally or statutorily related. We look at working with our legal counsel to go through a section at a time, or the whole policy manual at a time, to bring them up to date. So that's probably a discussion in reference to that question, your statement, that I think we probably need to consider.
I guess one of the reasons I thought about it is because we couldn't really finish the business at the last board meeting, and I don't think we want to get into always having to put off a month in order to get our policies straightened out, a month or two, in order to move forward.
I would concur, and I think probably where we should start is just talking to our legal counsel and saying, okay, here's something we want to look at. We take that upon ourselves to bring it to you guys to take a look at, find out what it's all going to involve, what the best process is, and of course, financially, what we can update all of our policies. It would be nice to do it like a section at a time, I think, and take a look at the 1,000 section, the 2,000 section, and update those.
Is there any way to make them even a little bit more general? Let's just say in the future, we don't have an assistant superintendent position. And So now we're going back and updating that, you know, can it be something to the effect of, per the board's discretion or something along those lines? Just in case, again, like we don't have a business manager position any longer, so now we're, you know, having to go through and update all those, but you know, is there a way to generalize that a little bit to have that discretion in the future if positions change and titles change and.
Yeah, I think it's a great, I think there are policies where that flexibility is nice to have. This is one of them. And so I think that's a great question. And we should.
That's probably a good question for a lawyer, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
A member of the board or their designee,
Yeah,
because that would be anybody on board, or anybody at all,
Yeah.
so.
I think we should just make a motion that anything that says business manager now says assistant superintendent, and you just clean it up. I mean, how easy is that?
yeah, that would be great. I think you're right, you're right on, all the way around. Is we take a look at it, and just say, what would it take, and definitely create the flexibility where we can in specific situations like this, because you're right. As times change, things change, and always having to back up and make those changes, it'd be nice not to have to do that where we have that flexibility. So. Okay. So we'll start that discussion. All right.
Next up is the bus contract and RFP.
All right, essentially, we're kind of at a point with our bus contract that we want to bring to your attention tonight. We've been talking about it, and I guess first I'd like to just say thank you to Mid-States. I know they're not here tonight, but they were here at the December meeting, and we did thank them for being here, but I mean, just over the course of the last few days, and not to mention the first part of the school year, they've just made a lot of necessary changes in meeting our requests and our demands to make it a more efficient model all the way across. And I think we've started a great relationship per se, just in this year of being able to communicate and back and forth. So I think a lot of that is we have a new director at Mid-States, Justin Hardwick, who's worked very hard at trying to make things operate more efficiently. We haven't made everybody happy, we understand that. We're not always going to make everybody happy. But Justin has worked very hard as the new director of Mid-States with Renee here in our central office. She has been phenomenal since the start of school of trying to make the necessary changes. So with everything we've done, we feel like we're operating with the three principles that we said we wanted to at the start of the year. Safely, more equitably for everybody, and more efficiently. Now I could delve into a bunch of minutia about why I think we've done those things, but those were our goals when we sat down at the start of the year. And I think we've accomplished them. What we've done, I think, is settled some of the dust, so to speak. Again, knowing we're not going to please everything, and not everything's perfect in the world of getting kids from point A to point B, but I think we feel very comfortable about where we've been and what we've accomplished. So we'd like to continue this relationship by avoiding the necessity to go out for an RFP, request for proposals, for one more year and see how we go. We've just started a lot of good things, and I think we have a lot of good things to do, and if we have to go out for a request for proposals, then that just creates instability in that relationship with us and Mid-States. So, I want you to know that's where I think we are in our discussions, and wanted to bring that to your attention and discuss it at the meeting, and then be able to move forward with a contract with Mid-States.
Has there been any initial discussions with Mid-States on a new contract as far as, you know, increases, anything along those lines? I'm just curious.
No, basically what we did is we prepared this, we talked to them, and the only initial discussion has been this is where we feel we are and what we'd like to move forward with. Are you guys on the same page? And if so, can we keep that, whatever, I think there's an input cost, we all know that goes into every business that may increase the limit every year, but can we keep that as minimal as possible? And I think we'll see a little bit of an increase, but it's, I don't know that we could go out and start a whole new relationship and a whole new foundation that we've started this year any cheaper. So, but we'd like to give that another year.
The one nice thing that they are working with also is software to really determine route optimization, and that is one of the things that, as we've been meeting, and we've had a parent involved as well, and so it's been kind of fun just to get the parents' perspective. But the parent has really been pushing for that route software, and Mid-States is getting it. They've already put all of our routes in it. They're really working with it to figure out, first of all, how can we get rid of the middle school hub? Because we know that is, I mean, it has gotten so much better this year than it has been. So much safer this year for our students, but we also know that it gets chaotic sometimes in the morning, especially for those, especially at the very beginning of the year when you're riding that bus and you have little ones that are sitting there going, oh, where am I supposed to go? You know, they don't even know what bus they're supposed to get on and or transfer to, and so there is some chaos there that we'd like to have it from point A to point B, and point B being their school drop-off. So they are looking at, can we do that with the software, and they are going through figuring out, are our routes where they need to be, do they need to change, do we need to have the number of buses, do we need to, you know, if we decide to go to each elementary school, how many buses will that add, will that decrease anything? So it has been, I mean, they have been really working with us this year too, which has been kind of the reason why we've talked about, can we hold off for one more year and see if we can get our routes where we need them and have kind of the computer help us do, and get our busing to where we want it.
I guess in my opinion, the way, you know, based on what you guys are talking about, there's a lot of value in that partnership. And it seems to me like they're working with you, not, you know, throwing roadblocks up. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Versus again, like you said, Jason, starting all over.
Yeah. And I will tell you that at the start of the year, in July, we sat down and had a very candid conversation with Mid-States about the improvements that needed to be made. And they have worked very hard, I think, to meet our demands. Now, there's a lot of things that we don't understand on the other side that they also educated us on.
Yep.
I would say, in full honesty, but there were things we thought we should be able to do that, turns out that maybe that's not how it really works. But
I'm just glad we're not in the news like, you know, Omaha
Yes.
leaving
Yes,
kids
I
in their
know.
buses. That's,
And there were challenges this year because we went to the grade level buildings, you know, that was a challenge, I'm sure.
And the shuttle, or, yeah, but that's working out pretty smoothly.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing is, right now we have a system that is working and operating, and, you know, we have a request, an updated one, but we can hold off one more year just to allow time for us to evaluate the system and make sure that it's where we want it. And the one thing we did add into the RFP for when we do look at proposing it is that the company has to have that route optimization software. But they have to be using software to help determine that these are the best routes.
as I sit here and we talk about this, you know, I think my mind sometimes thinks about things that are gonna be in the future. I sit here and I think at some time, there will be software on a bus. And a student, when they literally step on the bus and off the bus, they will be, if that's not in there, it might already be, but if not, I think it was $1 million idea that I'm looking for.
And look at how much sooner you can retire then.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah,
not
like-
even need drivers in the future for buses.
Yeah.
The way
Yeah,
things
you're
are
right,
going.
exactly.
Maybe drones will just deliver them.
There you go.
There we go.
Kids on
Exactly.
the ship.
So without belaboring the point, that's kind of where we're at. So between now and the next meeting.
Now, Mr. Alexander and Dr. Nielsen will talk about the energy management position.
Yeah, as we talk about change, several years ago, Beatrice Public Schools hired an energy management, or instigated an energy management position with a person that was in charge of reporting on efficiency of energy and monitoring energy usage, and then reporting back all that information and making decisions on what things we could implement to save energy. All of that was done at a time where it made perfect sense, I think, you know, pre-computer, pre-technology, pre-analysis of those things that now are all computerized for us, or computerized systems. So, or most everything. Sometimes we still have to remind people to shut off the lights, but you know, that's part of human nature. And now we have a lot of rooms where you walk in the lights and they come on and they don't. So that would be a benefit of a new building that we can talk about in the future at some point, is it to go to complete automation that would be totally efficient. But as times have changed, I don't think we're in a position anymore where we necessarily need that energy management person to run those reports and do it. With the computerized HVAC systems, it's just like this room. If you'd have walked in here at noon today when we were setting up, you'd have thought, oh my gosh, it's freezing cold in there. Well,
As opposed to the balmy now.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. It is much more work though now.
As
Yeah.
Danielle sits over there bundled.
That's me every day.
Just go out to the hallways. You can tell we're saving energy in the hallways.
Yeah. So all of those things have changed over time, and I guess we're proposing that at the end of the 1920 school year, we eliminate that position on the basis of that. We want to do this as humanely as possible with the person that's involved. We've contacted that person, told them we're having this discussion, set up a meeting. In the process of setting up a meeting with that person in the near future, and just working with that person to say, okay, here's what we're doing, upfront, honest, this is what we want to do. And if we have a paraeducator position open, we would be interested in holding that, because I think that would be a good position for that person. So ultimately, it kind of comes down to the fact that as we know budgets get tighter, this is a place where we think we could save $15,573 for the district and repurpose that position into a paraeducator position. The other reason, I guess, I look at this, and it's a long ways from the classroom of kids, which is our focus. And if we can do this and do it as diplomatically or humanely as possible, then we keep that emphasis where we want it to be, which is in the classroom of kids. So, just want you to know where we come from on it.
Who will be asked to do what this person's currently doing?
A lot of it will be done mechanically, and then I think we have to make a concerted effort, which we already do when we bring in new staff. At the start of every year, we educate them on this particular, energy efficiency is a big part of the
To know the reports. Who's gonna run these reports?
Well, to be honest with you, they haven't been run
Oh,
effectively since about 2012. So that's another reason. I
Okay.
think the computer will do a lot of it. We just have to.
okay.
And we have systems with Johnson Controls that kind of monitors things as we go, and monitors what we are saving and what we can save, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now the Interlocal Cooperation Act Agreement, Mr. Alexander.
All right.
He's just gonna mix.
This is
There's attachments.
there are attachments. This is an agreement between, Tobias has been working on this. It's an agreement between the city and the school for use of this room and all of the equipment that's in here. And so basically it needs to be brought up to date. It expires here shortly in 2019. So Tobias sent it over and said, hey, this is what we used to have. This is an updated version, and it reflects all of that. The only thing we're missing right now is Exhibit A, which is an updated listing of all the equipment here. So that's being put together, and we just need to make that agreement with the city that we currently we've had in place for the last 20 years on this particular room and all the equipment in it, and then update it to make it, create that interlocal agreement with them, so we continue that relationship we have, use of this room as we do now.
The SendCap Perkins funds update.
All right, this is another one that things are changing. I told the administrative team the other day, and you've all heard it before, so this is no epiphany, but the old saying that there's three things you can count on. You're gonna breathe and live, you're gonna pay taxes, and you're gonna die. And in between the first and third things are gonna change, and that's how it is. So every year, Beatrice Public Schools has utilized federal grants, which you heard Jackie refer to earlier, called Perkins funds, to pay for our SendCap partnership with SEC. Well, these are dual credit course programs that we offer, and we provided some information for you in your packets about what impact this has for students in our high school that are taking dual credit courses, how much money it saves, how many courses our kids have taken. That's all in your packet for you for information as to why we need to do, I think we need to do what we need to do. And these are basically, these funds that we've received federally, we've always been able to just streamline to SEC to pay for that partnership program and those dual credit courses to be delivered. But the state will not allow us to continue to do that. So just instead of the receipts coming into Beatrice Public Schools and being streamlined straight to SEC for that relationship, we can no longer just do that anymore. So what the proposal is what's called a memorandum of understanding from SEC that we're still going to receive those funds. Beatrice Public Schools is going to get those funds federally, assuming that the government, we hope sometime, that we're going to get those funds, but we're going to have to create a different way of how we utilize them within our district. We're not just going to be able to send them to SendCap. So what I'm asking you to consider is that when we get those funds in, we're going to look at the allowable expenses we can utilize the Perkins funds for, and then shift that cost to another department and use those funds out of our general fund to pay for that SendCap program, because we believe that we still need to be able to do that. If we don't, it has a tremendous effect on our students in high school that take those dual credit courses. So it's really just kind of a shift in the general fund that we'll still collect those Perkins dollars. We'll have to figure out how we can use them in the allowable expenses, but our general fund then will pay for the SendCap partnership instead of just being streamlined.
So basically no net change.
No, that's our goal. It's gonna take some creativity, I think, on our part. We talked the other day and Dr. Nelson said, well, if we use the Perkins funds, because one of the allowable expenses under the Perkins funds is improvement of technology. So we can take those Perkins funds in, you can buy computers with them, you just can't buy Chromebooks. They have to be higher model, higher end computers. So through our CAD courses, our computer aided drafting courses, we can look at those computers, we can look at other computers that we use.
They have to be tied to a career area.
Yep.
So it cannot be like Lab 200 that's for everyone. I mean, it has to be a very specific. And that's the one thing that it has always been nice to just take the Perkins funds and push them over to SendCap, because Perkins is very constraining, and so it has been nice to.
But are we gonna have the amount that we have sent to SendCap, is that gonna be more in line with what other schools are spending? I mean, we were sending more than other schools. Are we gonna continue to send more than other schools?
Well, we receive a lot more than other schools. We're the only school that is a standalone, what they call a standalone district. And that's because of the number of students that we have. And so we receive more. So
They
we'll,
were free and reduced, that's what we receive.
yeah.
It's not, because Norris would be a standalone, right?
Yeah,
I think they are now, because it's very reduced.
yeah.
We will receive around $19,000 is what it will be. And so the memo of understanding says that we get that $19,000 and then that goes back to SINCAP. If we are going to still participate in SINCAP, then all of the funds go back to them.
So it's not a, whatever we were paying before, we're still gonna pay that amount. But we're just gonna have to take the Perkins funds and utilize them within our own district, and then figure out how to take that amount from that 19,000 we get from Perkins, and use it in our own district, and then find it in our own district 19,000 to be able to send that to SINCAP. So I don't know that there's a less expensive way or a more efficient way to operate the SINCAP partnership.
But I would hope we would encourage all of our staff then to participate in that program so the kids can enjoy those benefits.
Absolutely.
I think that's probably more important.
Probably one of the big ways to do it is through distance, it's called DEU units. Every class we send out that maybe one of our staff can teach over distance education, we receive extra funding in DEU units for that. And so that would be one way. Every class we receive is another way we receive distance education incentives in the budget. So there's a line item for that. And if we can encourage that, like you said, improve their staff, that helps us.
Well, it helps kids to be able to get that half tuition.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think encouraging kids to enroll in the career academy courses and follow that career pathway, I think is huge too. Just continuing to get our numbers up to where they need to be and providing assistance to students who need help. Maybe with some of the college tuition and working with them. I know Jason does an amazing job. If students come to him and say, hey, I need help with this, he is very willing to go find funds to help students so that they can be in those career academy courses.
Well, he's been very helpful. I mean, at the point when I was involved with it, we were the only school that provided textbooks. And honestly, the textbooks sometimes cost more than the tuition,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. Especially with that.
And of course, we all know that they changed regularly then too. They,
Yes, every year.
we had edition 72 FB
Uh-huh.
free.
Yep.
All right, any questions? Now we're gonna talk about board retreat dates.
I've communicated with you, kind of what we're trying to set up. I know logistically, that's gonna be difficult with everybody's schedule. So what I would ask is that maybe you look at your calendar, not maybe, if you would look at your calendar and shoot Danielle, maybe 3 dates. In my mind, I think probably the time before, or at the end of winter activities, before spring activities really kick off, track and soccer and everything. If we can find in that window of opportunity, maybe 2 or 3 days, then I can work with the person that we're trying to organize this with.
And what is that?
Could you send a Google, I mean, one of those polls out that just has those dates on it?
Yeah,
And then we could say
Yeah.
yes or no to those dates. I think that'd be helpful.
Beautiful.
that might be easier.
Right.
Great suggestion.
I don't know if we all know the magic time between sports.
Yeah. Here's a crazy thing for you. The February, or the spring sports meetings is coming up February 12th. It's coming up.
I think practice can start the 25th or something.
Yeah,
Very, very, very
so if you can believe that, that's crazy. All right. Couple of quick updates for you. I know, I appreciate your attention. First, I would tell you that we had a very good administrative team meeting on the snow day we had this week. Our administrative team all had a choice of either rescheduling or coming in. They all came in and said, let's meet. This is a great opportunity for us to sit down and talk. So we talked for a great deal of time, and most of it was budget and updating everybody on where we were and why we're gonna be doing the things that we're doing, which I kind of told you about at the January meeting. So that message will be going out to staff tomorrow, just so you all know, and I'll include you on that message as well. Try to make it as humorous as we possibly can. That's going out, but kudos to our administrative team for coming in on a snow day when they could have necessarily not had to do that, and we had a great meeting, and didn't feel rushed like it did. So, it was a great meeting. Also, I would say, just a couple of other quick updates for you. Today went to, as a stance member, went to the stance meeting at the Capitol this morning, and we met as a group, and then we each were assigned 6 senators to visit with, and I got to go out on the legislative floor and see Senator Dorn and visit with him, which was a terrific opportunity. He came over, he was very welcoming, so I think we were very fortunate that we have Senator Dorn in place. I think he's got the right intentions in mind and is concerned about the issues and not the votes. And so I think if we can encourage him to continue to do that, that'd be great. It was a great day this morning. From 8 to 12:30, we hit the Capitol, we visited with senators, and got to visit with him. So appreciate the work he's doing there and keeping the address at the forefront. A couple of legislative bills. LB 110. These are things that I'm not going to talk taxes to you tonight, but LB 110, adopt the Medical Cannabis Act. Keep an eye on that one. It's in the Farm Bill. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out in the state of Nebraska. And if it is legalized, if we can put schools at the forefront of the revenue that's generated off of it. LB 343, authorize school to allow employees to carry concealed handguns. Keep you updated on that one. There's a proposal to allow employees to carry weapons. And LB 515 changes provisions relating to the Student Discipline Act. This came out last year. There's been some amendments and some adjustments to it. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that one. Just as a quick update.
Do you know, and Doris had mentioned it to me earlier, so I did listen to the news tonight. There is also a bill out there regarding opt-out students or choice.
Yeah, choice schools. Senator Linehan did today, and it was interesting because we were all there as a stance committee, and there was the choice schools that were all there. We have option enrollment in the state of Nebraska already as a choice, and so it'll be interesting to see the details of this bill. Haven't necessarily been put out, except for that anybody that makes a donation to a private school will receive a tax credit for that.
Okay, because they were talking about scholarship students, and I haven't read the bill or anything, but I did listen to it and listen for it specifically because Doris had mentioned it.
Well, I was a little concerned because they said there would be no financial impact on schools. But the minute a student walks out our door and goes to a different school, there's a huge financial impact. So I didn't know how they had figured that. So I'd be interested to see how they're doing.
And I guess I was confused because we already have school choice. Our students can go where they want to go already.
That's exactly right. So I will tell you that, I would anticipate that the majority of our large educational associations in the state of Nebraska, organizations in the state of Nebraska, will oppose this. And oppose it for all the reasons you just said, and that financially, if we are talking about this pool of state aid money that we give to the 249 school districts in the state, which is, if the governor fully funds the proposal this year and the committees fully fund that like the proposal says, that will be over $1 billion of state aid. So if that happens, but then all of a sudden you throw this choice in out here for charter schools, a charter school means 3 things. It means it's funded by public funds, private funds, and corporate funds. So if we take this pot of money and all of a sudden a portion of it goes to fund a charter school, how can you say you fully funded the formula? So.
Well, and I think we have to also recognize that charter schools are probably never going to be in a lot of your rural communities, including this particular community. So we really don't get any benefit from any charter schools. All I can see is that we have tax dollars being taken from our public school system.
Yeah, and it's exactly the issue. If you were at the governor's, we were at the governor's thing the other day and we talked about, and I've tried to communicate with you about the tax shift of what's happened with the increase in valuations. All that's done is taking the responsibility of state aid decreasing to schools and the gap between those two things and shifted it to our local taxpayers through valuation increases and property tax. If we do this, that's just gonna widen that gap. And so it's gonna be interesting to see how this particular bill unfolds and how the unicameral supports or doesn't support it, but our governor doesn't support it. So,
Was there any thing mentioned about the, I read today that Omaha Public Schools cut $19 million from their budget. And what's our budget, 23?
yep.
You know, they cut 19 million out just to satisfy the latest payment on their $773 million shortfall on their pension plan. They better not be anybody out there, including the metro legislators, there better not be anybody trying to get the state teachers fund, which is well-funded,
Yes.
together with that, and make make two that are in trouble.
There's a whole host of retirement bills that are out there, so it will be interesting to see if, and my particular fear is at the end of the session, when the omnibus Christmas tree bill comes out, and there's all those attachments, one of the things will be for our defined benefit plan that has been well-managed, well-funded, and just taken care of, will try to be utilized for exactly what you're saying. And I would highly encourage you to communicate that in written form. I'll make sure it gets to where it needs to get. But yeah, anytime, I will tell you that state senators love to hear from you, and especially Senator Groney, the Education Committee Chair, much more than he wants to hear from me. He doesn't even want a superintendent stepping in his office, so.
We don't want to hear from Groney either. He shouldn't even be in that position.
Yeah.
They could take a lot better people to be in there than him.
It'd be nice to have a pro-education committee chair on the education committee.
Right. Yeah, if you haven't read that World Herald article about the funding of the OPS pension fund, you need to read it. It is a joke how they lost money.
Yeah.
Well, and it's such a shame because that money's coming and directly affecting the students and the staff at this
Oh, right.
point, because they have to fund it.
Yeah.
And so they're taking it out of the budget that should go to the education of
Right.
kids.
Right.
If there's nothing else, the only thing I would say before closure is thank you to our media. We have a new media member. Scott, do you want to introduce her?
Sure. This is Monica, she's our new reporter.
Okay.
Hi, Monica.
Welcome, Monica. Where do you come from?
Kansas City.
Kansas City? All right. Wow, you went from one big city to the other. That's in my opinion. Just saying, in my opinion. Doug, thanks for being here. And then you two young ladies who are over there, assuming you're here for a class assignment,
Yes.
okay? Which class?
American government.
Did you learn anything tonight?
Kind of.
They just look up.
Or just bored stiff?
I'm interested to hear about the SENCAP because I'm in the CNA SENCAP.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for being here.
Also with that concealed carry thing for teachers, I'm certainly glad that Mrs. Martin is not a teacher anymore.
I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine.
I can see you packing down the hall.
I can see me looking for the thing. Where's the paperwork to go? This is the proper time for public questions and comments on any topic. Would you guys like to address us? Then do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move it forward, did you have anything?
Just, this that was put in front of you are the most updated versions of schematics that we've been working on. What do I want to call him, design guy for Bluebird has been working on. So what we have here, choices A, B, and C are, this is the last round of kind of free choices that we get. After we start making too many more adjustments, it's gonna cost us. So he sent me that today, as he sent me these yesterday. So I would ask that of A, B, or C, just send an email, which one you like the best, and then suggestions you might have, and we'll maybe do one more mock-up, and then we'll try and get as many of those suggestions in as we can.
So is the goal to have this bus for next year?
Yep. It would arrive in hopefully July. June, July.
Have they addressed, I had someone talk to me, and I don't know a lot about safety, you've all seen me drive, but, a gray bus, is that hard to see? And if they travel at night, would that be more difficult to see than, I mean, the person that visited with me said buses are yellow, school buses are yellow for a reason. They're easily seen, but would and I said something about a white bus, and I know that was met with great displeasure, but is a white bus easier to see than that gray, where the gray is on here, or can it be a lighter gray? I don't know, I'm just asking, I don't know, I don't wanna send kids out to something that's not safe, just because it looks nice.
Yeah. In terms of the shades gray, this is the lightest gray of the gray options that are available. There are darker grays, but I agree with you. I want,
I don't care what you do as long as it's what's safest for kids.
Yeah, I would like that addressed, because, I mean, I think the sides, those are really cool and everything, I don't have strong feelings about that, but if it's gonna make a difference in safety, I would rather have a white, safe bus than a gray, looks good bus. So, maybe you could check on that.
Yep.
Please.
I can tell you that this general scheme is, it's kind of off of the design that Seward's using with they're getting a gray one. Now, there's all different, I should say all different, because we really wanted to try and do orange, but you can't get orange.
Why?
That's-
For what we're paying, they can't get.
Well, you know what's interesting is they can do the orange side.
Yeah.
But I guess if you want an orange one, then go with B, because it's got more orange on it than any other color.
Yeah. There's green, you can order green.
How does that big O, does it go up over the window? Is that on the window? That, I care more about kids being safe.
And I think there are a couple things, just so you know, that aren't shown on here, that we would need to do, or we could do, is put a big, I think we could put a big B on the front of the bus. I don't know how big that would be, but I think a reflective B on the front would be kind of cool. And then somewhere on the bus, I think in due diligence for the Thomas Foundation, we need to have some sort of insignia that says this bus is partially powered by the Thomas Foundation in honor of that donation of $50,000 received. So,
Yeah, I would check with Mike Willett on that.
That's probably
Maybe
a
maybe they
requirement.
don't want anything on there,
Yeah.
so.
I think that'd be a requirement to that
I think they
particular
do.
grant.
I think the Humane Society has something on there.
yeah, I think it warrants that.
And just so I get in my old man plug, that I've always had, I still prefer the B to the O. We've got, if you notice there, we've got Lady O and we've got Orangeman. We don't need another O in the middle. But if you put a B, hey, That's Beatrice's bus, that's not Odell's. Odell is also orange, black, and white. And, you know, it's just me.
Why did we do an O? I don't know. I don't have,
Well, I think in the original schematics, we had them do an O and a B, both of those. So, you know, one of the other options we have here is taking this to the kids.
no, because no.
We had that on the original, on the football field. We had 100,000 votes cast. Now, what does that tell you?
I remember that.
Let's figure state aid on that.
Yeah.
Someone stacked the ballot? All right,
Yeah.
with that, if you have suggestions on this, please make them. Thank you for communication and attendance tonight. Thank you both, everyone, for being here.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move the Board of Education of District 15 adjourned.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Your votes, please, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.